Welcome back to another episode of BHAW Radio. We're at episode 62, and I'm your host, Brian Rowan. With us co-hosting tonight, Ty Reedy. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm back. I felt like I was voted off the island there, B-Row, for a while, so good to be back.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more, but I want to make sure we introduce our guests today. So, Colonel Nick Gist, Master of the Sword, very well-versed name up at West Point, 1994 graduate of the Academy. Been involved with the wrestling program for, ever since I was there. I feel like, for the last 20 years, everybody who's graduated has known your name. So appreciate you coming on the show and welcome.
Thanks for having me, B-Row and Ty. I appreciate it. Always good to see you guys, even if it's on video, but even better when you can make it up to West Point. Love seeing former wrestlers come up, get in the room, talk to the guys. I know that's, regardless of the generation, I know the guys appreciate having former wrestlers still involved in the program. And certainly BHAW Radio does that. Your commitment to the program in that way and in many other ways is great. We love it. We love every bit that we can get out there and put a good face on Army West Point wrestling and BHAW.
Yeah, well, that's what we're here to do. I went up to East Stroudsburg last weekend, and it was kind of funny because I ran into a couple of parents, and I felt like I was like a celebrity because they were like, B-Row. Not many people call me B-Row. That's the thing. Like, most people call me Brian. So like when people refer to me as B-Row, I usually think they've got to be Army wrestling related and don't really know me that well because that's really it. But no, I'm glad it's making an impact to our dozens of listeners.
Yeah, let me say one thing real quick is, hey, Veterans Day, right? So thank you both for your service, and a shout out to all the folks that'll listen to this podcast and thank them for their service. It's important to reflect and remember those who've come before us and laid the pathway, and couldn't be prouder to continue to serve, but it's a privilege. And happy Veterans Day to everyone listening.
Same to you, sir. Thanks for leading the way. Awesome.
Appreciate that. So kind of moving into this, I understand you played golf with Coach Ward today.
We played today.
Yeah. A little bit competitive.
It's always competitive when it's so today it was three of us. It was Coach Ward, Colonel Tom Cook. For those that know Tom Cook, I think most who've been around Army wrestling know the voice. So the three of us play quite often, and today we had a beautiful day in the Mid-Hudson Valley to get out and play another round. And it's always competitive. It's always intense. Maybe today a little bit more intense at one point, but it's a lot of fun to get out there with those guys and just talk about whatever. Could be Army wrestling, could be golf, could be anything in between, could be family, but it was a good day. We had a lot of fun.
Was Cook just sending sabos down range the whole time, or just like
he hit
Gunner Sabo tank?
Yeah, he hit a few. Tanker hit a few. Yeah, I love spending time around Tom. His intensity is you can't match it, whether it's golf, wrestling, teaching CY 105, or talking about being an armor officer. His intensity is pretty amazing, and I look forward to another year of Army wrestling, but this year where we can all be there and listen to him, Matt side, cheering our guys on.
It's good to be on the same side of the bench as Cook, not on the opposing team. Because if I was another coach, it'd drive me nuts.
Yep.
He's known.
What's that?
He's gonna have to travel a bunch. I mean, we only have the one home duel with Lehigh. Everything else is away, so he's gonna have to travel a bunch to bring that intimidation factor into their home gyms.
And I'll tell you, he said, I know we're going to talk a little bit about the travel schedule. He's already told me, hey, I'll go to everything. He loves to travel with the team. He's known very well, probably nationally, but certainly within the Eastern Conference. He's known for his mat side antics, which are very professional, absolutely. But he's loud, and I don't know how he sustains that energy through an entire tournament. He has his work cut out for him this weekend at the Journeyman, though. We're sending, I think, 30 some wrestlers, and they'll all get 3, maybe 4 matches apiece. So he's got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, just all that time spent 20 years in a tank, just yelling at the driver and the loader.
Yep.
So are you, as the highest ranking OR on the team, do you get to like pick and choose which events you're going to?
I do, and I guess it's, maybe I'll say a little bit selfishly, I like to travel with the team. But we've got a great group of ORs, and they really span the academy in so many different areas. They're willing to do whatever's needed to help out with the team. I'll say that we're probably first and foremost just huge fans. But we want to support the guys in whatever they need. But yeah, I do get to put together the schedule. Todd Messett gracefully stepped aside and has allowed me to, I guess you could call it take the reins as the head OR, but it's really a privilege to have a good team of ORs, and we share the traveling duties, but there's probably a smaller group of folks that do most of the traveling, and I'm definitely going to travel as much as I can this year.
So what if any ORs are back that are former wrestlers, just for people that are listening that might know?
Yeah, good question. So Lieutenant Colonel Matt McGinnis, he's in the Department of Physical Education now as an academy professor. And I think Matt's class of 2002. And I think he was a maybe 141 pound wrestler.
Yeah.
We've also got Captain Mike Gorman. He's also in the Department of Physical Education. I can't remember Mike's weight. I want to say 157, 165 sounds about right. But Mike's definitely involved. And then Lieutenant Colonel Eric Gust, who's in Department of Military Instruction. He's actually the chief of a session. So we got branching coming up, and that's his portfolio. But yeah, he's a former wrestler as well. And I think Eric was actually, if I remember right, a heavyweight wrestler. Doesn't look like it now. He's definitely slimmed down, still a big guy. But those are the three former Army wrestlers that are serving as ORs right now.
With is McGinnis, is that a permanent professor? Is that a permanent position at the academy?
It is. So Matt was an
Oh.
aviation officer.
Nice.
Got selected to be an academy professor, which is a permanent position in the Department of Physical Education. So he finished up his PhD at the University of Florida and joined us about a year and a half ago in DPE. And he's our director of fitness education, and also within our department responsible for our holistic health and fitness initiative. The Army has a new initiative. I won't go too deep into that, but he's responsible for that in our department. He's just a great officer, and he's taken on, if you remember, Paul and Beth Merritt for years would sponsor the firstie wrestlers. Matt has taken on that role as being the firstie sponsors. So I think him and his wife and their two little girls have the firsties over as much as they can.
Well, tell him, and I'm hopefully he'll listen, but tell him we said congrats on that. I know, I went back as a TAC, and obviously, intimately, I mean, going back there is a special thing to give back to the academy, and then to do it permanently like you and now Matt McGinnis and a former wrestler, that's pretty special. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's another one of those privileges that you don't really anticipate or think about too much. And in the latter part of our careers, we've been fortunate enough to get back here, and we love what we do. Obviously, we love what we do in DPE, but we love what we do here at the academy. It's a great family environment, and we have a lot of fun getting to spend time around the wrestling team too.
Cool. Awesome.
So kind of diving into, more into your relationship with the team, not having wrestled at the academy, talk to us a little bit about, kind of going through the academy in the early 90s and kind of how you've developed that relationship. Did you have a relationship with the wrestling team back then, or how did that kind of come to be?
Yeah, so there's a longer story there. So I grew up wrestling, right? 5 years old, I first stepped on the mat and love the sport. Once a wrestler, always a wrestler. And I would say I had a fairly successful high school career out in California. I'm from San Diego, but didn't really get any attention recruiting wise. Came to the academy and still wanted to wrestle. It didn't play out that way. I just simply wasn't good enough. And I think that's a good thing, right? We've had a quality program for a long time, and it just continues to get better. But I remained a fan throughout. I remember back in those days, and I know you've had a few of these guys on, but Nick Malden, Dave Warnick, TJ Wright, and several others, some of my classmates that were in there. I would, anytime we had a dual meet, whether it was in Hayes Gym or another part of Arvin, I think those were the main places where dual meets occurred back then. I was always there to cheer on. I mean, if you're a wrestler, you understand the sport very well, obviously. So regardless of the depth of your connection to, any of the individuals or even the team for that matter, you just love good wrestling. You like seeing guys get out there and battle on the mat. And, obviously then I wanted to see Army come out on top. But it's always been a lot of fun to support the program. And certainly as a cadet, I tried to do that as much as possible. And then when I came back to DPE in 2003 as a captain, I got involved back when Chuck Barbie was the coach. I got involved as an OR then. A good friend of mine, TJ Wright, was in DPE. He's class of 93. He was also an OR. And we would follow the team wherever we could. I remember we'd jump in the car and drive out to East Stroudsburg for a duel or drive down to Navy for the duel there. I think, maybe in 2000, I can't remember the exact, maybe it was 2006. No, I know what it was, 2005, because we drove down to Navy, my wife and I and our two young kids, and I didn't want to sit close to the team. So I sat further up because I knew I would be on my feet and yelling and, just cheering the guys on. And I don't think my wife wanted to be embarrassed by that, my antics mat side. So I was a little bit further away from the mat. But yeah, I've always followed Army wrestling since I, came back in 1990 as a cadet. And then, of course, when I returned as a lieutenant colonel in 2013, walked straight into, Joe Heskett's offices and said, "Hey, Joe, I'm Nick Gist. I'd love to contribute any way I can," and became a part of the program back then. And I always tell Kevin, "Hey, I'm first and foremost, I'm a fan, but wherever else I can help out, let me know."
Awesome. Well, when I look back at like kind of my time, and you talked about, getting back in the DPE and like the, early 2000s. I remember when I was a plebe, you were still at the academy, and I don't know why, and this is like kind of embarrassing. I used to think that like the instructors were like, it was competitive with like IOCT times and APFTs and things like that. And just kind of being back at the academy the last couple of years, kind of like with my brother-in-law being there, I realized like how not of a factor that is at all. But with that being said, what would you say your IOCT time is right now?
Yeah, so because you gave me this question ahead of time, BHAW, I actually had to go look up my cadet time. So I'm going to be proud of this, right? This sounds a little arrogant, but as a cadet, I ran 2:29, and I thought that was pretty darn good. And then when I came back to DP in 2003, and you say we are definitely competitive. There's no doubt about it. I'm not anymore. The captains and majors are. But when I came back as a captain, I ran 2:24, so I beat my cadet time. So right now, today, I really don't know. I haven't run it all out in a while, but I will tell you in the last 2 years, I ran a time fast enough to still earn the IOCT tab. So I'm proud of that. That's why I say it. But there's nothing that can humble you more than the indoor obstacle course test. It's brutal for those that have ever done it. They know how tough it is. You kind of have to embrace it. I always tell cadets, no matter how fast or slow you run it, it's going to hurt. So you might as well go as hard as you can, and then get to that finish line as quick as you can. But yeah, it's still somewhat competitive. I'll tell you, among our younger officers, they'll still come into the department, especially if they teach military movement, formerly gymnastics. They're gonna try it out, and they're gonna put themselves on a clock, and then the majority of them do earn the tab, the coveted tab.
What's the time? Is it like 2:40?
2:38 is
2:38.
an A-, which earns you the tab. Yeah.
But yeah, golly, it's horrible. It just,
yeah.
You're right though. It doesn't matter. Like everyone is just toast at the end. You're done.
Yeah, it's so, and I love, having you in class, and I remember, well, anytime you have wrestlers come through that class, I don't teach that class anymore. I primarily teach in our kinesiology major, but also a little bit of boxing. And whenever we have wrestlers come through that class, it's impressive because, wrestlers grow up learning how to tumble. They have great, strength to weight ratio. They have great balance, agility, coordination. So that's what that class is about. And they come in there, and a lot of times the wrestlers want to earn every point. I remember Jack Wedholm a handful of years ago. He was determined to earn every point, and he got about halfway through the class and he had an injury. So, we had told him, hey, Jack, you can still finish the class. You've earned enough points. He said, no, I'm going to drop it because I want to come back and earn all the points. And sure enough, he did. I think he either earned all of them or came up one or two short. And then this recent year, we had another one of the wrestlers. They take it yearling year now. So we had one of the class of 2024 guys. He was the same way. And even I walked in there one day and he ran the IOCT a second time just to pace a classmate. It's neat to see that kind of determination, teamwork, as part of really what is an individual course, right? And so always love seeing wrestlers in there. Remember the Simpsons coming through there, tearing it up, and Chandler Smith. I'm trying to think of some of the others I might have had in class, but yeah, it's for a lot of cadets, that class is an equalizer, but for wrestlers, they do really well.
And I think the thing that's awesome about it is that I don't know, and I guess you probably know this, maybe not, I'll put you on the spot, but when it first started, but that thing, hasn't changed much over all these years. And it's a common thing that I can look back on, guys from the 60s and I don't know, when did it start? Do you know?
Ty, you just put me on the spot. That's
sorry.
I think no, it's okay. I think it started in the 40s. I'm trying to picture the history in my mind, but I think it started in the 40s. And you're right, it hasn't changed much. There was a couple of small changes, where the balance beam is now. There used to be parallel bars, and you would basically walk on parallel bars, not inverted, but you would walk as if you were doing dips.
Right.
And a few other really small changes, but it's largely unchanged. So cadets from anytime over the last 70 years, 80 years, could walk into Hayes Gym and see that it's the same test and the same requirement to demonstrate excellence in physical fitness. And I think more important than the physical fitness part of it is the mental toughness that's required, right? Because you get to that rope and you get up to the track, and your fitness still matters, but it's gut check time.
Mm.
So while you were talking about that, I quickly Googled it. There's a Wikipedia page that is very in depth about the IOCT.
Okay.
So you were right, the 40s, 1944. But it's in depth with like changes in 1948, 75, 79, 81, 82, 80. It hasn't updated with like what the records are, and like it is. Whoever's maintaining that page cares a lot about the IOCT.
If it's on Wikipedia, that means it's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
That's neat.
BHAW will be on Wikipedia one day.
That's right.
I've got two bones to pick with DPE. One of them we'll get to later, but the first one is the only B I got was in my senior lifetime sport. I wanted golf like everybody else, so they gave me volleyball, and I got a B+ in volleyball of all things. It's like it still eats me up.
I can one up you on that. Is that you're only B in PE or at West Point altogether?
No, come on, sir. Who are you talking to? In DPE.
Okay, so we sponsored I think he was class of 07. You guys are 9 and 10.
I'm 05.
Oh, you're 05. Okay.
09.
But we sponsored a cadet, and we still, we went to his wedding. We're still in touch with him today. He's class of 07. His only B at West Point was in military movement, and I was his primary instructor for that course. He was in the running for Rhodes Scholarship, and that was his only B in the at West Point in any of the pillars. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
Or at least in the academic and physical. But yeah, it's a tough course.
Yeah.
So volleyball, huh? Who was your instructor? You remember?
Some civilian guy, mustache, glasses, shorter.
Dr. Lynn Felix, probably. Yeah.
Man, he was watching that ball on that line. I was with the serves or something. I don't know. We
got to maintain the standard.
Yeah, you do. But so let's go back. Let's rewind a little bit. So let's talk about how you got to West Point, being from California, whatever. How'd you know about it? And then maybe just a quick, journey through your time at West Point, and then kind of what got you into aviation, and from there.
Okay. Yeah. So, I in high school, I certainly knew I wanted to go to college. At the time, I really wanted to wrestle, and the idols out there were in Iowa and at Iowa State. Some of my friends had gone on to Cal Poly, where they had, ultimately had some successful careers. I had one of my buddies that did go to Oklahoma for a few years. One buddy was a Division II national champ at North Dakota. So, I kind of had wrestling on my mind. So I was applying to schools that had wrestling teams. But I also had a guidance counselor at my high school who really understood the nomination process. And we'd had several kids from our high school go to the Air Force Academy and Naval Academy. And I think we had one go to West Point. And so at the time, my best friend and we both were applying to the service academies. I think all three, or at least in my case, it was all three. And being from San Diego, and my dad had been in the Navy, I was focused on the Naval Academy. Good thing that didn't work out. But my best friend ended up going to the Air Force Academy, and I got the phone call that I got the nomination, got an appointment to West Point. And of course, my parents were excited. I don't think I was quite as excited, just to be honest with you, going that far from home, kind of the unknown. And then just, you don't really know, at least I didn't really know what it meant to be an Army officer. I just didn't, right? We like to think now that we did at that time, but I didn't know. But I accepted the appointment, have no regrets at this point. But so entered in July 2nd, 1990, a few days before my 18th birthday. Probably only the third time I'd been on an airplane, I think. Flew into Newark. Our day, I was an average cadet by all accounts. I had to work hard like anyone else, but ultimately it was pretty average. But for some reason, aviation appealed to me. I'd never really thought about it before, probably, maybe the end of my yuck year, maybe that summer between yuck and cow year, started to seriously think about it. Maybe it was a ride in a Huey or something like that. And so ultimately I did CTLT at Fort Bragg with an aviation unit, and got to actually fly a little bit in OH-58 Alpha Charlie model. And I was hooked. And so fortunately I did select and got to branch aviation, and flight school at Fort Rucker, assignments all around the world, Korea a few times. Then obviously got back to West Point that first time, as I talked about earlier. Really had no idea I would ever stay in beyond my initial commitment. Matter of fact, I think if you ask my wife, she'd probably say, yeah, you were dead set on getting out. But at about that point where it was, my active duty service obligation would have been up, the DP opportunity kind of popped up. I hadn't really been pursuing it. I think maybe I got a brochure in the mail or something like that. And so I applied and got selected. And I guess the rest kind of, tells the rest of the story. I did go back to aviation after my first tour in West Point, back to Korea, did a trip to Iraq, Command General Staff College. There's probably another assignment or two in there, but when I was asked to come back the second time, I was lucky enough to go to grad school again at University of Georgia, study exercise physiology. Then at that time, obviously, I knew that was probably how I was going to finish my career, was either at a 3-year assignment at West Point, or if things worked out, then I might have the opportunity to get one of the permanent jobs. And that opportunity came up my second year in DPE. I applied, and fortunately for me and my family, that part worked out. And here we are 8 years later, still doing it. And there's probably an end in sight. I just don't know what it is yet.
What is there a max? Like there has to be is the Army, it's what, how many years, 42 or something like that? Or
yeah, so when you become a professor USMA, and that's all the department heads and deputy department heads on the academic sides, there's 26 of them, the director of admissions, the vice dean for resources, and the head of DPE, my position, are all called professors USMA or PUSMAs. And when you get appointed to that position, you can serve until the month after your 64th birthday. So for me, that's, just short of 15 years away. So I
Wow.
got 15 more years in DPE. I'm pretty sure I won't stay that long, but we have had department heads at West Point stay to their 64 and serve for an incredibly long time. It obviously provides continuity at the academy,
Yeah.
but I'm likely not going to stay that long. I'm going to keep doing it as long as I'm having fun and as long as I feel like I'm relevant to our mission. And the department's always going to do well because we just have great people, an incredible mission, and the cadets are great. But for me personally, I want to still feel like I'm relevant to the Army and to the Corps cadets.
Do people ever
Sure.
get out from like the active duty side and then move into like the same civilian job that they had there? Does that happen frequently?
I won't say frequently, but as I think about, so about half of DP's faculty are civilians. And so I think it's 24 positions. 6 or 7 of those have served. And maybe somewhat ironically, of those 6 or 7, I'd have to count them up real quick, but of those 6 or 7, I think only 2 are West Point grads. I think the rest are all were commissioned elsewhere, other sources of commission, but just love their assignment in DP as officers. And then when they got out, either via retirement or after an end of an ADSO, applied either right away or maybe a period of time afterwards and are in DP now as civilians.
I just feel like, once you've been in for probably like 25 or 30 years, like if you could switch over as a civilian, like financially, it probably makes more sense to have your pension and then your civilian, assignment there. And then you don't have to maybe deal with some of the, some additional duties that you may have as, at being active duty as opposed to a civilian. I'm sure that I'm not the first one to think of that. That's probably come up.
You're absolutely right. That's, I think, any of those folks, that's probably a lot of their thinking, but I think they also are, it's such a unique role and responsibility in the Department of Physical Education. Maybe one of the last bastions of true physical education, certainly in the nation, but maybe even around the world. Certainly the breadth and depth of what we do is significant, but I think for our faculty, they really enjoy what they do in a very unique part of higher ed, right? The activity courses, it's great to wear a t-shirt and shorts to work too. Don't get me wrong. But I think what we do and the very high quality of our cadets makes the job very rewarding.
Mm-hmm. I always find it so interesting when people come back several times to the academy over different periods of time. And you've been there from, 1990, not the whole time to present, pretty much during all those periods. What are like big changes you've seen that are happening? What sticks out to you? Obviously, wrestling team getting a lot better, football team is a lot better. And there was gaps in between, but what stands out as far as, kind of changes that have happened that you could speak about?
Yeah, it's, I mentioned earlier that I'm not a big core has person. As a matter of fact, when I go out on Founders Day talks, around the country, I've done, several of those. I often go in the other direction and I'm sure to share with our old grad network that the core hasn't. The core is strong. The core is, this generation is certainly committed to service. Probably more than any other, right? Because they've seen 20 years of conflict, of combat with Iraq and Afghanistan, yet they still raised their hand and said, hey, I want to go do this. The pursuit of a great education is no doubt still more than available here at West Point. I think our academic programs are incredibly strong. You can compare them to any of the top tier universities in the United States, and we're right there with them. You add to that the immersive environment with all the incredible role models that surround you, both civilian and military. The Mid-Hudson Valley is a neat place to live. And this is coming from someone from Southern California. I like the seasons. Like I said, today was a beautiful day. The fall here is great. And there are so many opportunities. I walk into Arvin Cadet Physical Development Center every day for work, and you kind of have to pinch yourself that we're fortunate enough to have the kind of facilities we have, and the trust that our nation's leaders have in us to provide us great resources in order to pursue the superintendent's vision, right? And that is that we're the preeminent leader development institution in the world. So the changes, you could look anywhere at the academy. You could walk into the mess hall and say, yeah, things have changed. You could probably walk into various classrooms and see how some things have changed, but we still use the Thayer method of teaching and learning, right? You come prepared to class every day, and you got to come prepared because you're probably going to be assessed in one way or another each and every day. The small classrooms are still there, right? We still have about 18 cadets per section. We've added some research centers that are attached to a lot of efforts and outreach to the Army that have strategic significance. Our athletic program is still performing at a very high, not still, continues to perform and even increase its performance at high levels within conferences and even nationally. You mentioned the football team. Of course, we're all familiar with the Army wrestling team and the steps they continue to take up and continue to want to, right? I mean, coach's vision is chasing greatness, and chasing greatness it's an infinite mindset. There isn't a stopping point for that. We're not going to be satisfied with anything short of you putting everyone on the podium. So, there's probably a lot of small changes, but in terms of big changes, I can't really point to any specific. Just proud to be here. It's really a neat place. I'd always say three things, right? The people I get to work with every day, the very important aspect of our mission to the Army, and then the Corps of Cadets. If you're in higher ed, I don't know that you could match the quality of our students and cadets and cadet athletes anywhere else in the country. So those things are all still there. It's a tried and true process. It's still going strong. And yeah, I'm probably grasping at straws. I probably, Sammy's the same, right? And I every once in a while, even Coach Ward's done it. We'll be guest inspectors for Sammy. Sammy's the same. The mess hall's still the same, but there have been improvements in the mess hall. We have some new barracks. Speaking of what's changed, I'll be honest, right now, the infrastructure change that's ongoing, and we're probably about, I think, 9 years into it, from cadet barracks upgrade program to academic building upgrade program to all the athletic facilities that have been improved upon over the last 2 decades. The infrastructure has undergone some pretty significant changes. But if you walk on, and I don't like calling West Point a campus, if you walk on post and you walk around the cadet central area, things still look like West Point, but there's been a lot of improvements within.
Yeah,
I
no
haven't
doubt.
left the dorms. I've seen pictures and stuff like that, but it's kind of one of those things like the AC in the dorms. I know there's probably a lot of old grads out there like, oh, look whereas.
There are a lot of old grads that grumble about that, but I'll tell you, I mean, what's wrong with having AC? If we want them to have a great environment to get quality sleep and have a great environment to study and prepare, I think that's worth it. It seems like a small thing. Don't get me wrong. It's probably a lot of resources for our Army to commit to, and we're happy to have it. But those things are small. The summer training is awesome. I didn't mention that. The summer training is a cut above what I experienced, and I thought what I got was pretty darn good.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. So when people ask me, like, I work for a company that was co-founded by a 55 grad, and we have a 65 grad that's on our board. And I was with those gentlemen in Austin at a conference last week, and I was telling them the same thing. I mean, when I went back there, the cadets we were pumping out of that place is just top notch. They get better every year, for sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
That's good. What company were you tech for?
E3.
E3. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it was fun. But back to you. So BRO told me that your daughter just graduated in May. Congrats, firstly.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I can empathize with her because my dad was my middle school and high school principal. So I kind of know how a little bit what that's
Yeah.
like.
You definitely know that.
Analogy right there.
Yeah. So how was that like for you? And I guess talk about maybe if you remember the first time she told you maybe she was thinking about going, and maybe how that conversation went, and maybe through the
Yeah.
process. That'd be cool to hear.
So much like what you just said, right? When your father was a principal. So anyone that's ever had a parent be their coach in a sport or a teacher in their school, it's much the same. And so when Maddie, so she was totally against coming to West Point. We had to drag her out of Athens, Georgia, between her 9th and 10th grade year. You think that age, 14, 15 years old. She had, her friends, the team she was part of. She did not want to move. And so when we moved up here, she was, I think, a little bit bitter towards the idea of West Point, even though she didn't know much about it, because we left here the first time she was 7, 8 years old. So she was against it. And so she was thinking, hey, I'm going to apply to Clemson, where her mom went to school. I'm going to apply to Florida. I think she maybe even applied to Auburn. I can't remember exactly. But I had convinced her to consider the summer leader experience. I said, hey, doesn't mean you're committing to go to West Point. It's not any kind of commitment, just a week-long leadership experience. And so she did that. And I still remember the first night, that first day, they're reporting to the cadet in the red sash. And that's really kind of the first experience she had with anything related to the military, outside of what she saw, parades and things. And she's texting me and her mom and saying, Dad, I hate this. I've had to report to the cadet in the red sash 9 times. This is miserable. And then we didn't hear from her until Friday, and I picked her up. We live on post. So I went down and picked her up Friday afternoon. She jumps in the car, and it's a short ride from our, where I picked her up to our house, but it was nonstop. Her telling me, Dad, I want to go to West Point. I want to major in this. I want to branch this. And I was like, whoa, stop. What happened? And believe it or not, speaking of wrestling, her squad leader for SLE was Russ Parsons.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So he must have had a good influence on her, but she came back from that experience and said, Dad, these are the kind of people I want to spend my time around. I enjoyed a lot of the things that we did. And so sure enough, she puts in her application to West Point, pursues a nomination out of the district in California where I have my permanent home of record. And she didn't get in. People always kind of tilt their head at that. They're like, well, couldn't you have just gotten her in? That's not how it works. She didn't get in. So she was fortunate enough to go to Marion Military Institute for a prep year, and then did get in out of Marion, and became a member of the class of 2021. And yeah, she just graduated back in May. She branched aviation. She just started Bullock a couple of weeks ago. So we're definitely proud of her. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined, what the Army would have done for us, our family, both of our kids, because my son's actually a yearling now, class of 2024.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And both of them have a little bit of a tie to the wrestling team. A lot of their friends are wrestlers. I think it's just maybe naturally they were around them when they were in high school and or around the team. And so Maddie was a manager for a couple of years, and now Graham, my son, is actually a manager of the team, and a lot of his buddies are on the team as well. So yeah, our tentacles are all in West Point and in Army West Point wrestling.
So did your daughter major in branch what she told you on that car ride?
No, I think she told me she was going to major in engineering psychology, and she ended up majoring in kinesiology. And then she did say she wanted to branch aviation, and sure enough, she branched aviation. Which I don't for anyone who is an aviator out there, from past years, when they branch aviation now, they have a 10-year commitment after the conclusion of flight school. So she's looking at 11 and a half to 12 years of active duty. straight off the bat by selecting aviation. So it's a big commitment.
Well, I think it was always 7 years, but that included
Yeah.
your time.
That's
or-
right. And it just changed. It just changed with the class of 2021.
Wow.
What is there? Is it just because it's so expensive to bring you through flight school that it's more of a time commitment, or what was the how behind it?
Yeah, I don't know all the details why Army senior leadership went that direction. Certainly they had a very strong justification for it. I don't question that at all. I guess it was probably based on the amount of training. I suspect it also could have something to do with aligning with the other services and their aviation commitments. But I'm not positive about any of that. But yeah, I think it's probably 2, 3, 4 different variables that led to that decision.
So Ty kind of alluded to this earlier with the next topic. As I was doing research for this episode, I was, on actually on Wikipedia. So actually, I don't actually don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I searched, Master of the Sword, and there's a Wikipedia page on that too. And Colonel James Anderson held the position from 1974 to 1997.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm guessing you knew him. I mean, you were at the academy when he was there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
The backstory, that's a long time.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about him. He's a legend, right? So, I mean, 74 to 97, he retired. He actually did retire the month after his 64th birthday. He's doing great. I think he's 89 years old, living down in North Carolina. He was up here 2 weeks ago, came to our tailgate, VP's tailgate. He was a legend. He had commanded a battalion during the Vietnam War. Ultimately, found West Point, came here. I think he was the deputy department head for a year or maybe even more. I don't know the exact history on that, but then became the department head. And he was the first department head of physical education who became a member of the academic board, which was a big deal. And then of course he was obviously the department head when women were integrated into the academy. So, I have historical documents in my office where he published a lot of data and informed leadership on how that integration should work, particularly in the physical program. And then he was instrumental in so many other efforts and outreach to the Army. He wrote a lot and spoke a lot and still does to this day with his son on character and sport. Big believer in that, that athletics provide a great medium for developing character. And I obviously, totally agree with that and think kids being involved in athletics and team-based activities is incredibly important. But yeah, Brigadier General retired Jim Anderson, 23 years as Master of the Sword. Great guy. Every once in a while I call him, but it was nice to see him in person. I guess it was about a month ago now for the Wake Forest game.
He's crushed more souls than anybody on the planet. My God.
Thousands.
Jeez.
So
that's incredible.
So you alluded that you could stay there for another 15 years, but that may not be the case. What's your way ahead? What's your plan?
I probably should have a plan, but I really don't have one. Like I said, as long as I'm having fun, and I am, I want to keep doing this, but I think at some point there's probably also a reasonable path to retire and allow someone else to lead the Department of Physical Education. So I don't have an exact timeline. I still feel like I'm young. I can't keep up with cadets anymore. I try. I feel like, their energy, their enthusiasm, in some ways helps to keep me feeling younger. I don't lace up the wrestling shoes very much anymore. When I do put them on, it's kind of a lot of jokes come my way, but that's okay. I'll take it. But yeah, my wife's a teacher on post at the elementary school. So if we had roots anywhere, and like I said, I'm from California, she's from South Carolina. If we had roots anywhere, I'd have to say it would be here at West Point with as much time as we've spent here. And as much as we know about the community, and it's sort of a little fishbowl, but we really love this environment. It's like I said, we're passionate about what we do. We get truly excited even every year as we come around around the block again for our day, for reorgi week, for football season, for wrestling season, graduation, all those, monumental events for individual cadet classes. I think that's exciting for us because for them, it's, they get to do it once, and we go around that block many, many times, but it's exciting to see their parents. It's exciting to see the growth that occurs in cadets over the 4 years or 5 years if they go to prep school. We really would love to see that, and it's exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. So for anyone that's listening that wants to go back and be in DPE, they need some advice, and only one of 3 people on this call were successful in getting back to DPE. So
sorry,
all three of you applied to go to DPE.
Yeah.
So
That was my second bone to pick with you, but that's
no,
fine.
I know. Chad
Water
Monroe
under the bridge.
Chad Monroe said the same thing. I know.
I don't feel so bad if you didn't let Chad in, and I don't feel so bad about not getting in myself.
Hey, it's tough. It's tough. Ty, Brian.
Yeah,
I mean, every year we have a really strong group of officers apply, and I'll tell you, I didn't mention this earlier, but I didn't get picked the first time I applied to DPE. I think Matt McGinnis was an alternate the first time he applied to DPE, and our deputy director right now, Julia Wilson, she was actually. I reached out to the department, reached out to her directly to fill a spot that had become vacant. And so you never know when, things can go your way, even when you're not, you might not get selected the first time, but it's a incredibly competitive process. What I tell officers, and I always tell the wrestlers this, because we really like having wrestlers back in the department. We know they can teach just about anything, except I joke with Chandler. He probably couldn't teach swimming. Even though in reality he could, because he's that tough and he's that gritty. Chandler Smith could teach swimming. I think that was the only course he got to be in as well. But I tell people, really what you have to do is go be a great officer, go be a great company grade officer, be a great second lieutenant, be a great first lieutenant, be a great captain. And then beyond that, it's just timing, right? The timing has to work out. And, the Army has a path that people can generally follow, but there's branches off of that path. And one of those branches is the broadening assignment at West Point, whether that's as a TAC, an instructor in physics and nuclear engineering, or an instructor in Department of Physical Education. And that competitive process gets us a very high quality group of officers. But I also know there's a lot of very high quality officers that ultimately we didn't pick. But our department's only so big, and I would love to be able to have more people, right? More would be better, because I know the quality would still be high. But yeah, it's I get it. You can sling arrows at me. I'm to blame for some of that for sure.
No, it all worked out. But yeah, so yeah, just go be a good officer. That's it. I mean, you can't control what you can't control, right? And so the timing, right, you said, is the biggest piece of the timing.
It is, yeah, because you got to have that time in the back end of the back end of after company command and prior to your key and developmental jobs as a major. You got to have that window to do a year of grad school, 3 years here, and then probably a year at Command and General Staff College. So that's talking about a 5-year window where it's got to fit for you and not put you at risk for promotion to major or lieutenant colonel.
Yeah.
So appreciate you coming on. Before you leave though, we need to get your input on your top 3 listeners you want to have on here. You've come across pretty much every Army wrestler probably in the last 20 years. So I hope you've thought through your decision here. Who are the 3 people you want to see on here next?
I haven't. I'm actually going to go further back than 20. You've had so many guys on here I would have mentioned. I'm probably going to give you more than 3. So I hope you can accept my ideas and see how they work out. And if I can ever help you, I will. So number one, am I still on here?
Yeah.
You're good. You're
Okay.
on now. Yep.
Number one is TJ Wright, class in 1993. TJ's a really good friend of mine. We taught in DP together. We were ORs of the wrestling team together. And I want to reconnect him with Army wrestling. And so I can help you connect with him. He was a tremendous wrestler out of the state of New York, great Greco-Roman wrestler. I can't remember what the weights were back then, but today he would have been a 197 pounder. But just a great human being. Above all that, a great human being. So he would be one. I think the other one I'd offer to you, if you can get him, is Doug McCormick, class of 91. So I think if I have this right, Bob Arvin, Army wrestler, was the first captain, namesake for Arvin Cadet Physical Development Center. Doug McCormick was the first captain for the class of 1991 and was an Army wrestler. So I think he'd be a good one to get on. And then the last one, this is kind of a sentimental one, and I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I'm hoping that Joe Heskett can come on someday. You know, Joe is not to put a damper on this call, but you know, Joe is also a great person. Coached at Army, I think, for 5 or 6 years. He had a stroke, I think, as most know. He's recovering. He's working on his recovery. But I'd like to see him get back to the point where he can join y'all on this show and talk about his time with Army wrestling.
Great.
There's a 3 solid choices, and I couldn't. I'm glad you took the time. I can tell you thought long hard about those 3. It's funny with TJ Wright. So this is actually on me because I reached out to him, and he was supposed to come on probably like 2 weeks ago, but we had planned this like after August, and I kind of dropped the ball because I was supposed to send him like a calendar invite for like 2 months down the road, and I forgot about it. And then it just kind of thought of it like a couple weeks ago. I was like, oh shoot, I need to reconnect with TJ. But when we were connecting back in August, he calls me on the phone, and we're like, you know, I'm talking about it, and he like mentions, he's like, yeah, because you know Sully, or he mentioned somebody, and I like. It was one of those things where I kind of was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know who you're talking about, but I had no idea who he was talking about. We were talking for probably 5 minutes before like we realized he thought I was somebody else about a different topic and a different podcast for like, the special operations community. Like, and he was like, I'm like, eventually I was like, this is for Army wrestling. And he was like, oh, okay. And it was just like, okay. I was so confused for a little while. But yeah, that's we talked for like 30 minutes that day. But yeah, so he's definitely an interesting cat.
He is, and I think one of the best parts would be you gotta have a photo for your social media, because his hair is getting out of control. I'm gonna push his buttons a little bit. I'll either call him or text him and tell him to reconnect with you. Yeah,
I friended him on Facebook. I remember him like as a DP instructor, and he was like a boxing instructor. And it wasn't fair. He was so big and his arms were so long that like, I remember thinking this is so unfair. And he'd walk in, and his wife would walk in, and she'd have like their baby like strapped on her. And I'm like, this is a power couple right here.
Yep. Yeah, like, they are. And they are still today. Yeah.
And I see his hair, and now I'm like, this is not the same guy.
No, I'll tell you a funny story about him, because you just described him pretty well. We had a dining, either dining in or dining out. We had a dinner in DPE that back in 04, 05, and we had to do skits. And TJ and another guy in our department, Lenny Bornino, did is it Rocky IV with Drago?
Yeah.
And TJ played Drago, and Lenny played Sylvester Stallone, played Rocky. And it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. They were perfect. They must have rehearsed it a lot, because they played the parts very well. It was neat. But he has that kind of presence, that kind of, he's a good looking guy. Now he has the long flowing locks. Great athlete, great wrestler. But like I said, just a great human being. Him and his wife are a power couple. You described that very well.
Yeah, that was man, it feels like 20 years ago in one sense, and it feels like yesterday in another sense. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you hopping on the show. This was a lot of fun tonight. Ty, anything add before we head out?
No, I appreciate it, sir. It's great to see you. Thanks for sharing all that. We really appreciate it, and I think this will be a good one for people to listen to for sure.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I mean, I appreciate what you do. You know, any support to the program. We're trying to, obviously, Coach is leading us to continue to jump levels as a program. That'll just, continue to push the wrestlers to jump levels as individuals and the team to jump levels, and continue to be recognized on the national level. And then you guys know, obviously, they're all going to be great leaders for our Army as well, and that's important. But thanks for supporting all of that.
Absolutely.
Anytime. That's what we're here for. And
all right, sir.
BHAW, beat Navy.
Beat Navy.
Yeah, BHAW, beat Navy. We'll see you Matt side.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW radio show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.